Hello, everybody. I'm Joe Chaffee, and first off, I want to say right off the bat, thank you for all of you who liked my page yesterday. I know a lot of you guys are on the wonderful Tri-State Weather Board, so I appreciate you coming over and taking a look. Over the next few months, and as this goes along, it's kind of a work in progress for me. I'm going to be posting not only what I think about what's going to happen to the weather. I'm also going to probably be doing a lot of videos, especially when we start to get into snowstorm season. So it's going to be as if I'm on the air, even though I'm not necessarily on your television screen in a newscast. And I think I'm going to have a lot of fun with this. So I have a few ideas of what I'm going to be doing, and I will, of course, let you guys know what that is as I start putting all of this together. All right, just want to touch on a couple of things that came out yesterday that I think are probably important because, of course, we're all trying to figure out what the weather is going to be like for the wintertime 3 months in advance. I've never really quite understood the obsession with trying to figure out what kind of winter we're going to have, because it's a piece of information. If you have it now, what exactly are you going to do with it? Move? Are you going to, if you're a snow lover, are you going to suddenly relocate up to the Hudson Valley if it looks like it's going to snow there all winter, or move further south if that's the case and the trends are snow or a little further south, which does happen in some winters? But no matter, it's all part of the fun. And of course, two stories. One that I wrote about yesterday, which was the fact that the snow cover, the Eurasian northern hemispheric snow cover, was at a record pace. Record snow cover for the month of September, and based on what we've seen so far in the first 9 days of October, that snow cover continues to advance. And that's the most important thing to carry from this, is that it's not necessarily the depth of the snow cover, is how fast is it advancing and how fast is it growing. This was a key last year when we saw this happening. Some forecasters, some very good forecasters, among them Dave Toleris from Weather Risk, pointed out that this was a critical element perhaps in what was going to happen longer term in the wintertime, and he proved to be quite right. There were a lot of forecasts last year saying that the winter was not going to be anything like it turned out. So let's all put little grains of salt in all of this. The other story that came out yesterday was the fact that the Arctic oscillation, I did refer to it in a couple of pieces as the Atlantic oscillation. The teleconnection, sometimes when the Arctic oscillation is negative, also the Atlantic oscillation goes negative, but it was the Arctic oscillation is going to go to a huge negative value. Okay, so what does this mean? Because a few you folks are not all weather savvy. So basically what we're looking at are pressures in the atmosphere. When the Arctic oscillation figure is positive, it means that pressures over the Arctic are low. And what that means in the overall atmosphere here is that we have a jet stream that basically blows from west to east. And when that is the case, our weather here tends to be mild. The colder air tends to stay trapped up in Canada. When the oscillation goes negative, it means that pressures over the Arctic are high, and that displaces cold air south. So if we're going to see a strong negative Arctic oscillation, there's a high likelihood that what will happen is that we will see colder air further south. Now, bear in mind that it's not always a perfect indicator. There are a lot of short-term things that can happen in the midst of a longer-term cycle, say several weeks, where the oscillation is negative, where you could have periods in there where it isn't all that cold. Or if you're in the depths of winter, it isn't all that snowy. And it doesn't necessarily translate every single time when the figure is negative that you're going to wind up with a cold and snowy winter. In fact, if you look at the database, one winter back in the 50s was one of the warmer winters on record and least snowiest winters on record during a time where the Arctic oscillation was negative pretty much for a couple of months. So there are exceptions to every rule, and we have to sort of deal with these things as they happen and watch it. I'm a firm proponent of knowing all this stuff that goes on in the atmosphere, the Greenland block, the North Atlantic. I'm a big fan of the Greenland block because that's when it gets really cold here in the east. That's what the North Atlantic oscillation. And it's all good that we look at all this stuff, but at the end of the day, we have to see how this all impacts in the short range. And there are too many factors in the short range that can change forecasts, can make or break a forecast for that matter. So you can't just rely on these signals, although they are very, very important. So the implication of the negative Arctic oscillation for the month of October is that there are a couple of studies out there that show that when it's negative in October, it is likely to be negative during the winter time. So I think we have to carry that here with the notion that there's a pretty good probability that we're going to see that negative oscillation continuing through the winter, which would mean that it would favor that we would see colder than normal temperatures. I've been harping on one thing, though, and I just want to point this out. If it winds up that we have a cold and snowy winter here in the New York tri-state area, and of course, it depends on which weather station you look at. So I'm going to give you Long Island because I looked at it pretty closely. And I also looked at Central Park. And I'm going to give you a couple of figures here. For Long Island, for central Long Island at Brookhaven, the average snowfall since 1947 per season is about 31.7. Okay, 31.7 inches. For New York City, because I actually calculated this once, the long-term snow average going back to 1869 is about 28.5 inches. The 30-year average that you hear bandied about is around 24 or 25. But that number is going to be going up because we've had a snowy last 14 years once they take the last decade out. But no matter. We are going to have, if it winds up being above normal snowfall, we're going to have the 6th winter in 7 of above normal snowfall. Now, I went back and looked. On Long Island, that has never happened. It almost happened in the beginning part of the 2000-2010 decade, but by one of those winters, we missed it by about an inch of snow. It has never happened 6 out of 7. For New York City Central Park, the only time it's happened is back in the 1880s. And I'm using the high number here, the higher normal number, so I set the bar pretty high. It's only happened once, and that was back in the 1880s. So to have a 6th winter in 7 of above normal snowfall may be asking a lot. Still, doesn't mean it can't happen. There's always a first time for everything. So I hope that helps some of you in figuring it out. If you go to Wikipedia or go on, that gives a pretty simple explanation, easy to understand explanation of the Arctic oscillation, and you should go ahead and take a look at that. And of course, I'm going to be posting and forecasting and doing all sorts of things, including trying to have some fun stuff too. So thanks for joining me and for liking me. And we'll talk about the weekend and next week and whatever's going to happen a little bit later on.